See, we plan ahead. That way we don't do anything right now.
I think about lots of things. Now, why don't we not stand here talking about them and get down to doing them?
To begin.
Clytus, I'm bored.
To begin.
What plaything can you offer me today?
How to start.
I have a horrible idea. I have a brilliant idea. They're one and the same. Welcome to The First Syllable, a podcast about writing. In particular, it's sort of my way of brainstorming things I am currently working on or about to work on, occasionally commenting on things I already wrote. Before I get into this episode, and the bad idea, good idea, I recently found 2 recordings I did, a while ago. When did this happen? Future historians. For the record, these 2 recordings were recorded on January 27 and February 1st, 2023. Of course, if you're a historian, you probably have access to the original files, and you'd know that. But anyway, it was a year before the show actually came back. Back when the show was on hiatus, I did 2 recordings that I never ended up editing. I was getting ready to try to bring the show back, and then didn't. And I listened to them recently. And I'm like, I could make an episode out of each of these. One is about a short story I wrote in 94, 95 maybe, talking about its structure, a way I tried to change it later, and then decided not to, and how it still somewhat holds up. The other recording was about a novel I wrote the first couple chapters of, and then stopped my writing career, as it were. There's a lot of stops and starts. I would write the occasional story or incomplete thing from as early as the 4th grade. Earlier, I think I pointed out in a recent episode, but that I still have, it'd be the 4th grade, is the earliest. In high school, I wrote a few short stories, one of which got distributed around and copied. Lots of people read it, and somehow it ended up at the office where I was working across the street. Keep in mind, the cult I grew up in owned both the high school and the place I was working. The cult being Worldwide Church of God, the school being Imperial High School, which no longer exists, and the workplace being Youth Magazine, which, as far as I know, no longer exists. And Worldwide Church of God broke into pieces. I think technically it still exists, but it also became like 3 other churches. There's a lot of weird church stories I could recount. They all relate in a way to who I am and what I write about and what I think about, for sure. But then, starting in 96 through 2000, I wrote basically every day. That's when I completed multiple novels, lots of short stories, at least 1 screenplay in there. Then the early 2000s, it was kind of off and on. I wrote a few screenplays. I wrote another couple novels, some short stories. Then I didn't write for a while. And then I started writing, non-fiction-y stuff when I returned to school, because I dropped out the first time from college. I went back in 2008, I want to say. Technically got my AA in 2009, my BA in 2012, my master's in 2016. Is that right? I think that's right. That time I wasn't writing a lot of fiction because I was busy writing a lot of other things, reading a lot of other things. I did write a couple short stories in there. I was definitely planning stuff. In particular, a story I've talked about on this show, The Last Song of Whisper Blackbraid, is a story that I was working on and had a lot of structure and detail stuff set up ahead of time for. A whole little notebook of stuff. And I do hope to get back to that if I continue writing the Guardia Basara stuff, because Last Song of Whisper Blackbraid is part of one of the branches of the story. Because the overall planetary story follows the Odds and Kill and their entourage, expanding entourage, their angle of stories. They started in Aedith and then have now left the continent of Eliathea at the end of Four Finger Discount. And then another branch is going to be the Liavere stories. Chase Two Rabbits, the one I hope to write sometime soon, is the first of those. I have some ideas for a couple short stories with him, potentially more novels, but he's self-contained enough, just like I am designing the odds and kill stuff to be self-contained enough that any one of them can stand on its own or be part of a larger thing. Then there's Daggers of Crosswater, which was the thing that started as a D&D campaign idea, and now I think I want to write it because I want to control how the details fit together. And so it's going to become its own little branch, and then the Daggers, sort of the equivalent of, U.S. Marshals in the Old West kind of thing. But anyway, one of the unfinished things that I was writing, I think this is the thing I was actually working on writing when I was prepping Last Song of Whisper Blackbraid, was the third of the first three Guardian novels go together. There was The Empress of Time, which, when I go back and fix it, I'm probably going to change the title to A Stitch in Time. There was Lion Horse Tree, and then there was going to be Song of Fell Far Away. Song of Fell Far Away, in this thing I read this recording for this show that I might use in the next couple weeks, involved reading the prologue and the first paragraph, I think, of chapter 1, because there's a lot going on, and I was talking about the way I was writing Guardia stuff now. Those are 2 recordings I have sitting around. I still also have a lengthy recording that was a leftover piece of Existential Trilogy recording. That is an episode each of Minutia Ex Machina, Groundhog Day Project Minute by Minute, and Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Minute. That also included a whole conversation that was going to become probably 1 or 2 episodes of this show, with a guest, Luke Allen Houghton. He's a young filmmaker from the UK and friend of mine. We co-hosted 2 Minutes About Time together, where we looked at the movie About Time 1 minute at a time. Or 2 minutes at a time. But anyway, he and I had a whole conversation in these unreleased episodes that I probably will never get around to editing. We had a whole conversation about some podcast/YouTube video series ideas I had. There was a game show, which is still in my head and I still kind of want to do. And there was a sort of movie discussion, education kind of show. And I kept trying to find a way to tie the 2 together, but I think they'd have to be 2 separate things, and I think the game show's the more fun idea. Could actually be something that would get an audience. Just gotta give it some production value, even from the start. Anyway, the good idea, the bad idea, one and the same, is for going back and not rewriting Death, but fixing up actual second draft. I have the cleaned up first draft where I cut out a couple characters, recombine some stuff. Nothing's changing of the structure, really. I think 1 scene got moved. But what I didn't do was change the time frame. Still, characters all arrive in the afternoon, and by sometime that night, maybe midnight at the latest, the plot is over. End of script, done. I don't like that. I want to give it a little more time. I want it to feel more like they're spending a weekend at this cabin. I want to see more of the Bloodmore crew planning their movie they're going to make. Talking about... This was one thing that was hard to write, but this is something I want in there, is them figuring out the logistics of the location on the location, but it's something I can't write too precisely because it could also change logistically depending on where they film death. However, I'd like to do the rewrite not worrying about that. And so we get more of the filmmaking stuff and them sitting around and like framing. Like there is a comment early on where they go out and look at this shed in the backyard and AJ specifically says, this would be a cool place to die. It's foreshadowing for later, someone's going to die there. Also, I want more of that. Them thinking about how they frame these stairs outside, how they use the hot tub, how they tie the fireplace into whatever, and stuff like that. There's a nice game room with a gun rack. This should be established earlier in their filmmaking parts, where they're talking about it. Not a gun rack, a gun cabinet. I want to see more of the Mary's relationship. I want to see more of the slow development of Ed and Susan getting together. it would make more sense if we get the conversation between Ed and Marty and Ringo and Marty, because those two conversations are similar. But if they are spaced farther apart in time, they work. And we give Marty something else to do in the middle, like maybe interacting with the Marys. Or interacting again with Frenchie before she dies. Because Frenchie's the first one to die. Spoilers. I want to see more of Frenchie. And I don't mean that literally. Because we see plenty of Frenchie. But I'd like to see more of Frenchie's behavior and why she's more of a problem to everyone. Instead of just a handful of conversations, everyone dies, the end. Make it seem like these people are actually doing stuff and interacting and making plans. Maybe we get some of the filmmaking planning and we get some of the band talking about songs. And then maybe get one of their songs and lyrics. Each time I think of that, though, I think of Lar Park Lincoln's song that she sings in the movie House 2, where the song kind of sucks, and they have to pretend like it's good for the movie. Apologies. It is not Lar Park Lincoln doing the singing, performing. She is the agent in this scene. It is Amy Yazbek. I mixed up which person was playing which character.
Right, yeah. Oh, here. Yeah.
Can you hold on for just a second?
That I'd be taken up to hyperspace. It seems so strange. Seems so strange. I only touch you, and then you move right.
Excuse me.
Oh, hi, Kate. Hey, music too loud. Loudy, really?
What is this you're playing?
That's Puce Glitz and the Avoiders.
Puce Glitz?
Yeah, that's my stage name.
This is you?
Yeah, and I'm
her manager. Kate, I feel compelled to tell you, we are weighing several offers from some big producers, but to drop names would be tacky.
But you don't have a contract yet. I mean, you haven't signed anything yet, have you?
Oh, no! We don't believe in success.
Yeah, we want to make a lot of money and be real famous, but no success.
No, there's a very subtle difference, you know.
John, I've got to get back to you. I think I may have found what we're looking for.
But I feel like I need some of the musicians making a song that feels like it could be in the movie that Bloodmore is making. Bloodmore is the name of the production company in the 2017 part of the story, in case I haven't mentioned that previously. And so, having the band making a song, the filmmakers making a film, the people in 85 dealing with their personal relationship problems, with some sort of connecting fiber to tie them into the others in the mind of the audience. More of Polly's relationship with Richie, or burgeoning relationship with Richie, so it doesn't just spring out of nowhere when she kind of pressures him into having sex. So many of the characters could use a little more time. And then essentially what I'd be writing, already I feel like the script's long. I don't think it actually is, because a lot of it would play rather quickly. It's 130 something pages, whatever it was. For a slasher film, it's a little long, but I think it needs to be longer. I feel like what I want to write it as and treat it as is something that is more of a drama where eventually in Acts 2, 3, and 4, people are dying, like in a slasher film. Except structurally, it's not really a slasher film. Because, I mean, if you listen to this show, you know me. It's what I do. I fuck with genre and story structure and everything else. So, that's my idea on how to change death, death, death. Part 1. And part 2 will follow up on that, as far as format and tone and genre. But drift a little into its own thing, and part 3 would drift into its own thing, because structurally the story is deconstructing a slasher by having multiple slasher plots happening at the same time. Which is confusing. Hard to imagine as a reality.
Cut.
I should get coffee. Coffee would help me think. But I should write something first, then reward myself with coffee. Coffee and a muffin.
You're still here?
Okay, so I need to establish the themes.
It's over. Go home.
Maybe banana nut. That's a good muffin.
Go.